So I know a lot of you don't all have Omnisphere 3, but that's why we're doing an Omnisphere giveaway at busyworksbeats.com/Omnisphere. I'll leave a link below so you guys can hop in for free. You also get 2 free analog lab banks for free and an Omnisphere 2 bank. Okay, so firstly, the question is Omnisphere worth the money? I would say it got me super excited to make music again. Here's the main difference. Omnisphere 3 comes with real sounds, real instrument sounds, whereas before it did come with instrument sounds, but they weren't the focus. Now you have full-on instrument libraries, for example, and we could just hit shuffle. I'm just hitting on random notes. Okay, let's turn this. Okay, that sound just didn't want to end, did it? Okay. I didn't realize what that sound was. So burning piano, I remember this from an older library. Okay, so I don't know which sounds are super brand new and which ones are overlapping, but the cool thing now is that they have orchestra sounds. They have real sounds, basically, that, you know, before it was more synth focused. So that's one aspect of Omnisphere, is the fact that it now has more real instruments inside of here, so we can create more hip-hop melodies using those organic instruments. There's so many to go through, it's impossible to show you guys a video with everything. We're just gonna have to make beats with it over time. But also too, you know, they've categorized everything in these, I call them libraries, but they are called directories. So these different directories give you different styles of sounds. So before, if you guys remember, Omnisphere used to be divvied up in different categories like bells, synth polyphonic, synth mono, etc. But it was just so many sounds that there was no directional path. It was just kind of like a bunch of stuff. And it was a little bit to sort through everything. So now they've basically curated the sounds for us. They have so many sounds. It's 40,000 sounds in here. There's no way anybody's ever going to make a video covering every sound. It'll be 5 hours long, 10 hours long, just going through sounds. And what I love is that they've added this new curation layer called the directory. So one of my favorite ones is called Classic Digital. You really can't miss with this one. This one just sounds really good from top to bottom. Like even that random sound is dope. So just like super 90s sounds, like whoever was behind this Classic Digital put in work. Bro, none of these sounds miss, none. So again, I could click on any sound. This is, I'm telling you guys, this is gonna be the library that stands out. And again, I'm clicking on random stuff. Just craziness. Literally clicking on random stuff. Here you go. See how melodies just come to your brain? When you have the right sound, it inspires what you can do with it. And you're not overthinking melody. It just derives from the sound itself. So they have these new like ostrich egg samples in here, which are also really unique. Now that one I'd probably only play one note at a time. I'm just playing random notes, but man, every sound in here, bro, you cannot miss. None miss. Like they really, really went in. So the fact that they've curated these sounds for us helps us narrow down the tens of thousands of sounds that they would have in a general category that even if you say bells, I don't know which bell goes with which genre. So I'm glad they did this. So again, we could be here all day going through sounds. Also too, they separated the vocals into the vocal collection here. So that one's a little more. All right, even that was kind of dope. The boys choirs are super creepy sounding. Let's sort this by the name, and I'll play some of these. So this is like super dark sounding, and also too, you can add effects to Omnisphere 3. Some of the cool new additions are the effects, so don't sleep on the effects. So for example, we could add halftime to the sound here, and let's synchronize this with the actual BPM. And let's play super high notes like. Now we have halftime, and it sounds super vibey. Let's add some reverb in here. So what my favorite thing to do is halftime reverb. So let's see what this sounds like. Now we could also, let's do it this way. I'm going to show you guys a more advanced way to do it. Let's do an aux send. That way we can keep the original sound and also affect another sound. I know I'm moving kind of fast here, but I just want to show you guys. This is my own creation. I believe I'm the first and only person to ever think this way, which is to run a sound through reverb and then halftime the reverb separate from the original sound. So it's going to give us this super drill type sound, which is like really creepy sounding. And the more aux send we send, the more effect we get. So call me the inventor of this technique, because I discovered it by accident one time. And I discovered this years ago for people wondering, using different plugins in FL. And we could switch this to slow down the halftime speed. So now we keep the original boys choir, but then we hear this other, just like this other creepy tone. And that's a really cool way of using that aux send to affect other stuff. All right, so let's see here. Now I want to see, can we lock sounds? I don't know if we can lock the effects chain. That'd be a dope feature. Oh, lock mix value. I don't know if that's, I think that's something else. But it'd be dope to, I'm sure there's a way, I just don't know it just yet. But it'd be dope to lock down like a chain and then keep going back and switching out the actual source sound. But I think because this is considered an entire preset, it loads up the effects as well. It's just super creepy sound, right? So let's add this reverb in. Let's do a shimmer reverb this time. And let's do that halftime effect. Make it really slow. Now it's not on yet because we didn't send the common value over. You guys can hear that stutter. That's the let's also turn the shimmer up. So it gets really crazy depending on how far you guys take the sound here. And also too, something that's unique about Omnisphere, we can actually right click and modulate the aux send, like for example with the velocity. This means if I hit the keys harder, it will create more of a dark tone on that reverb channel. If I hit it softer, it will have less of that tone. So I just love right clicking and then doing different automations to try out different really unique ideas like that. If there was one chord to be played in heaven, it's definitely that chord. So that's, you know, some of the unique stuff you can do in Omnisphere 3. Now also too, there's this thing called quad zone. I showed you guys in a separate video. You could basically do multi-keys with this. So to keep this short, what I'll do is I'll load up different sounds on oscillator B, C, and D. And I'll pause the video because it takes some time to load these samples. All right, on each layer, I've loaded up different samples. Okay, so to load samples up, you click here to switch between synth and sample, or just click on the actual name to switch. And I've loaded up samples on each. What we could do now is go to what's called the quad zone. So let me make sure I can move this over. So the quad zone, essentially what we could do here is control things by note value or velocity. Now to create multi-keys, I'd recommend you guys stay on fader mode, turn the quad zone on. And we can right click this fader. So anytime I right click the fader, it could choose, it will change the value and it will trigger whatever sample lines up with that value. So for example, my bad, y'all, motorcycles going by. Okay, so we're just gonna left click and drag each sample into 2 columns. Okay, I found that this is the easiest method without getting too convoluted into what all this stuff means. Just grab the bottom left and bottom right, drag it into each 2 columns. This is separated into basically, what is this, 8 zones. Okay, so we could just segment these to 2 zones apiece, just like this. Now what we're gonna do is have this fader change a value every time we hit a note. So value 1 might be here, value 2 might be here, value 3 might be here, value 4 might be here. So if I hit a note, it will trigger that sample. If I hit this value, it will trigger that sample. If I hit in this zone, it will trigger this sample. And if I hit in this zone, it will trigger this sample. So we're gonna set up what's called a round robin. This is what this double R stands for, is round robin. Round robin is a sequential movement through a determined amount of steps. So let's right click here. Let's go to modulate by steps. And here we have 3 steps, or we could do 4 steps. Let's do 4 steps since we have 4 samples. And we're going to turn the source all the way up. So basically what it's going to do is every time I hit a key, even if I hit the same key, it will basically add 1 value here. Next value will be here. Third value will be here. Fourth value here. And it will trigger different samples every time I hit a key. So I'm hitting the same key. Just to prove it, I'll show you guys. Nope. I guess I can't do it via the note, but I'm basically playing 1 note. What this means is now I can play chords and each note will play a completely different sample. So what people used to love about Analog Lab is the use of the plugin called Pigments, but basically we can now use Omnisphere to create really complex multi-keys, because now we don't need Pigments to necessarily make multi-keys. There are a couple differences in Pigments. Pigments allows you to edit the loop values of your sample. It also allows you to do forward, backward looping and different types of randomness, which is randomness. We could do round robin, we could do, so it does have a couple more features, but for the most part, we get a little more flexibility in Omnisphere with this feature here. It's the only thing we need to do to maintain a decent sound is find samples that don't cause an issue. So for example, if I hit a key, these two, one of these has a delay, so that may cause an issue when it comes to playing different keys. So our dominant samples are this pluck right here, third pluck, and then the fourth sample there. So what I'm gonna go do is go back and swap this sample because it has too much of an attack time. We're going to swap this sample out here. All right, so we can just arrow down. I think we found the sample. So you want to fill in those kind of harmonic gaps because it can sound very disjointed if you don't choose samples that are kind of close in tone. See how it feels like something's still a little soft? So it could be velocity, it could be the sample itself. So there's many things we can do here to kind of solve this. Personally, I think it's layer A, so let's swap this sample. Now, a lot of these are like not tonal, they're more percussive. Better, but again, we can sit here all day. Another thing you want to do though is check the octaves. So sometimes, you know, you want to pitch stuff up or down. So if it's the right tone, like for this one, we could probably pitch it up 12 semitones, which is 1 octave. So it all feels a little more cohesive than one sound being an octave lower. So whatever sound is going, I think A and B just need to change. So I'm going to pause the video until we find alternatives here. All right, so I've swapped the sounds out for a flute, guitar, a harp, and a synth, just so it's a little more cohesive with the sounds. The other ones were a little too percussive. And then here we just set up our effects chain. So we already have the halftime set up based on velocity. Just like that, we can have a really, really, really unique sound. Let's just save this because we don't want to go too deep with it. But Omnisphere 3 is really just, what they have the advantage of doing, because some people may ask, okay, what's the difference between Serum, Omnisphere 3, and Pigments? And I'll say again, Pigments does have more control over oh, no wonder the sound's so good. Eric Persing was behind it. I'll just put Busy and Eric. Okay, boom. So what makes Omnisphere different is that Pigments is more focused on, in my opinion, you know, there's a lot of modulation you could do, but people use it, at least in hip hop, for the multi-keys effect. So it gets really granular. You can loop your audio. You can do really unique things, you know, round robin effects, random step sequencing. So you could trigger different keys that way. So it will give you a little more control over the actual sample itself. Omnisphere does not give you control, at least from what I understand. The manual's 1,200 pages. It's too much to read. Maybe you can, but from what I've seen, there's no obvious way to control the loop information. So you have to kind of pre-loop sounds before you bring it into Omnisphere, whereas in Pigments, you can loop inside of Pigments. So that's a big difference for people who are making multi-keys libraries. But Omnisphere just has way better sounds. Like, to start off with, you don't need to always use the stock sounds in Pigments with the, you know, the bells or the sustain or the guitar. Omnisphere has like 1,000 guitars. I'm just exaggerating. It probably has like 50 or more. It's just so many sounds to choose from that even though it does not have all the full controls as we may use in Pigments, the sounds alone just make up for the fact that we can pretty much do the same thing just in a different way. Okay, in Omnisphere. Okay. Now, speaking of the difference between Serum 2 and Omnisphere, Serum 2 is probably the best sound design tool in terms of modulation. It's the greatest modulating tool. However, you have to really know how to use it to get a good sound out of it. Whereas Omnisphere, you can modulate very similar to Serum 2, especially with these right-click values. You guys might not be able to see it because my head's in the way. But if you right-click here, you can modulate with different things like velocity. They've added the alternative panning. So, for example, let's say I want let me see, what sound do I want to have alternative panning? Let's just right click here on the pan. Let's modulate it by alternative. This is one of my favorite effects because I learned about this from the Dave Smith Instruments Prophet 6. There was this button called stereo spread, and when you turn it up, the notes pan left and right depending on how much you turn it up. So basically every time you hit a key, it will cycle to a different position. You could also randomize this. It might be better to randomize because we have more than 2 sounds here. So I'm going to put it on randomize for these other 3 sounds here. All right, so now when I hit the keys, they're going to create their own stereo field image because they're panning randomly. So now we can hear those sounds more individually, as if we were to arrange these in an orchestra. So you get a little more control. That's really good, especially when you use synth sounds, because you can really hear the difference in the sound there. So you can pretty much do the same modulation inside of Omnisphere. If you want more modulation, click this plus button near the mod matrix here, and you can access the entire mod matrix. So you can pretty much do the same, and there's 4 pages of modulation. So they really went in terms of modulation. You could also sort. So if you have tons of modulation, you could sort it. So that's a sound designer's dream, is a modulation, because that's what creates the nuance of sound. And they've added, a gazillion effects in here, from compressors to EQs. It's too much to show you guys, so I just have to show you how many you may not be able to see. So compressors, EQs, saturation tools. Here's one I forgot to use, the noise maker. I want to see what this sounds like. So this basically adds a texture behind your sound. That's fire. And this is on the aux. So basically, depending on how hard I hit this, it adds that noise. That's fire. Really unique, really unique. Man, they just thought of like everything we could think of. And you would have to blend this in. Of course, you don't want it to override our effects. It probably won't blend or sound cohesive with that shimmer reverb. Man, just really unique stuff. So again, a ton of effects. You can even use the Omnisphere 3 effects as a separate plugin. So if I wanted to add this, I would go to my effects, and it's called FX, or is it FX Omnisphere? And now I could do stuff to my voice. So let's say I wanted to add a compressor. I now have, a $200 compressor right inside of Omnisphere, right on my vocals. So they've added, basically, this is way more than just one plugin. This is like 20 plugins in one, because this is, they've basically created the LA2A sound. You guys would have to pay $30 on the minimum, depending on which brand you go for, all the way up to $200 from UA, for example, just to get this one plugin. Okay, so they give it to you guys right there. Then the 1176, for example, we could set these. So it has all the features of the real deal. Let's do 4-to-1. And so let me see. Let's do this. Release, fast release. So it works just like the real deal. I'm pushing my vocals really hard so you guys can really just see. And how we could use this for vocals as well. And then we have even an EQ. So if I wanted to boost the lows on my voice, I can make that radio effect just like that. You could go through different console types. So there's different lows depending on which one you use. Like the Neve's a little bit thinner than the API and the Pultec. And they create different harmonics too. That was one of the characteristics of each console, is they create their own set of harmonics. So a quick little EQ, you could turn up the highs to make your voice sound more present. And you can rearrange stuff just like this by putting the EQ first. Now we have control over the tone going into the compressors, and now the compressors are just there to amplify that specific tone. So, and again, we can add, I think we could save these presets. I'm not sure if we could share the presets, but one way you can share stuff in Omnisphere is if you hit Alt on your keyboard, because it doesn't show up by default. So hit Alt, left click, and it says Publish Library. And I think you can actually share presets with other people as a product. So there you guys go. For the more advanced people, you can actually hit Alt, click this hamburger, go to Publish, and that's how you share your Omnisphere presets, just like that. So I can see people making Omnisphere vocal channels. I can see people making creative melody channels. I can see people doing just all types of stuff, bass channels. So it's really more than one plugin. That's why I said it's so much to show you guys that I don't know how they did it in the presentation because there's way too much in this plugin to show you guys. But we went over multi-keys. We went over some sound design tricks in the effects. We went over how to even use your own effects rack. So if you like this video, smack that like button. Just smack it. Smack it. Go to busyworksbeats.com/Omnisphere. We're actually giving away a copy of Omnisphere. This is not a sponsored giveaway. This is out of my own pocket. I'm buying another copy for somebody. So go to busyworksbeats.com/Omnisphere. And just for entering the giveaway, you get free gifts, 2 analog lab banks for free. And I'm giving you an Omnisphere 2 bank in the case that you don't have Omnisphere 3. Giving you guys an Omnisphere 2 bank for free. It's built for funk and wave. So I'm giving you guys that. It was built around Skeller. Shout out to Skeller. His style of sounds. And what else is there to tell you guys? You get a ton of free gifts just for hopping in. So even if you don't win, you get a ton of free gifts. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/Omnisphere. Smash that like button. Smack it. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.